The words of the department head echoed in her ears. Ji-won buried her face in her hands, tears streaming down her cheeks as she wondered why she had done that back then. It's like going on an adventure solo, isn't it? Park and Han's story really took her by surprise. It turned out there were so many people who cared about her, including Hyene and Assistant Jane. If she had been braver back then, would the plot have twisted differently? Suddenly, Ji-won reminded herself to stop daydreaming. Love was a luxury she couldn't afford. She would stop at nothing to get revenge on the couple who ruined her life and absolutely would not live like before. The next day, Park Min-hwan was surprised to receive the food package Ji-won had sent over. She smiled beautifully, thinking he hadn't had breakfast, so she bought him an egg sandwich, unsure if he'd like it. Min-hwan joyfully moved closer to her. Of course he liked it. He wasn't angry at all, and kindly asked if she had gotten home late yesterday. Ji-won smiled apologetically, saying she was so tired that she just went to sleep as soon as she got home. Min-hwan thought to himself that she had been distant for a while, but now she seemed back to normal. However, since she was so beautiful, he let it slide. He suggested that if she was going to be late in the future, she should just call him to pick her up. At that moment, Soo-min chimed in, asking Ji-won if she had a date today, since she was all dressed up and made up for work. Yesterday she had dressed elegantly, thinking Ji-won was meeting her boyfriend, but when she saw him looking lost, she decided to approach Ji-won. "Hey Ji-won, who are you all dressed up to meet?" Ji-won replied that she was just meeting a few old classmates. The two of them flirtatiously made plans for dinner, making Soo-min green with envy. She secretly cursed Ji-won for being a little dressed up and acting all high and mighty, thinking that no matter what, she would always be beneath her level. Ji-won had clearly noticed that attitude. Soo-min couldn't charm him as she wanted, so now she wanted to snatch Park Min-hwan for herself. Her nature was to take whatever she wanted, and Ji-won knew this well. So, she decided to use that trait to her advantage. Soo-min was now completely in her grasp, with no way to escape. Just then, Hyene appeared and apologized for being late due to traffic on the bus. Cheerfully, she wished Ji-won a good morning. Ji-won smiled back at Hyene. It was only now that she realized, upon closer inspection, that Ji-hook and Hyene looked quite similar. Just then, Ji-hook glanced over, and Ji-won blushed, quickly turning away. His comment about not having a girlfriend but liking someone yesterday was full of implications. A little later, Jan-hook announced in the meeting that Assistant Jane's proposal had been selected for the new product project, set to launch in the summer. Everyone should prepare for overtime, and once the design department finished the prototype, they should start field surveys. Team leader Kim felt extremely annoyed. Assistant Jane thought to herself that although this was good news, working overtime meant no one would be able to take care of her child. Jin-hook also announced that he would be absent soon due to a business trip, and Assistant Jane would be in charge of his work. Assistant Jane nodded, thinking that if she did well this time she would get promoted soon, but she would probably be much busier. Her child was surely waiting for her to come home first and foremost. She would strive to provide her child with a fulfilling life. She could not let this project slip away. At that moment, she unexpectedly received a message from Ji-won, who had a favor to ask of her. Assistant Jane was taken aback when Ji-won expressed her desire to join the team, but why was Soo-min involved too? She knew the two had a great relationship, but this project was crucial. She understood Ji-won's intentions to promote Soo-min to a full-time position, but she feared that Soo-min still had many shortcomings. Ji-won replied, "It's not that I'm convinced, but I believe Manager Kim will try to sabotage the project." Assistant Jane, confused, asked how that related to Soo-min. Ji-won responded that it seemed Manager Kim had feelings for Soo-min. Assistant Jane was utterly shocked. "That old man? 40 years old, with a 20-year-old girl?" Ji-won nodded. "That's why his head is balding like that," Assistant Jane concluded. "So, Jae-won, you're saying that if Soo-min joins the team, Manager Kim will recklessly sabotage the project?" Ji-won nodded. "If we want to succeed this time, we need Jo Soo-min." A little while later, Assistant Jane stood before everyone, presenting herself as the team leader for this project. This project would be a collaboration between the marketing and development departments, and they would work hard to launch it by summer. Jiwon also introduced herself as the assistant who would take on the overall support role. Another person introduced himself as Leong-suk, the head of the second team in the development department. Their department had crafted prototypes within a limited time frame, totaling 3 types for field testing. Assistant Jane was pleased, thanked them, and praised the beautiful designs, suggesting they could go into testing right away. Jiwon thought to herself, "Thank goodness the prototypes are visually appealing." The issue was Jo Soo-min, who was worried about manager Kim. They had included her in the team, and Jiwon was concerned that Soo-min might tarnish Assistant Jane's reputation soon. Soo-min was directly assigned by Assistant Jane to conduct surveys at the supermarket, but she immediately requested a different task as she wasn't good at interacting with people. Assistant Jane refused, stating that this was an important job and, who knows, Soo-min's bright smile might leave a good impression on others. With no other choice, Soo-min reluctantly agreed. She was also afraid that Hyeni would snatch the opportunity to become a full-time employee from her. And besides, working with Assistant Jane meant collaborating with Park Min-hwan, so she had to go along with it. However, Soo-min felt that inviting customers to try and evaluate the new product was humiliating for her. Soo-min was furious. "How could Assistant Jane assign me this task? You thought I would just obediently do this?" She pulled out her phone to play games, ignoring the customers who came to try it out. She answered their questions half-heartedly, thinking that just because it was a free sample, she didn't need to put in much effort. People would still come to try it, and there would be plenty of social media buzz. A couple also stopped by the counter where Soo-min was sitting. The wife asked her if the dishes contained any nuts. Soo-min still didn't take her eyes off her phone and said, "No." The wife introduced the new product to her husband and handed him a bite. Just as he took a bite, the husband suddenly felt uncomfortable. The food box he was holding fell to the ground as his body broke out in red spots. The wife panicked and shouted, "Hyun's allergic to nuts!" Meanwhile, Soo-min was still glued to her phone, unable to look up, annoyed that they were making noise and interrupting her record-breaking fish cake game. Seeing Soo-min's attitude, the woman couldn't hold back anymore. She yelled, demanding to know why Soo-min said the dishes didn't contain nuts, and how she planned to take responsibility for this. Soo-min folded her phone and indifferently asked, "What do you want me to do now?" She claimed it wasn't her fault, saying the couple ate recklessly just because it was free food. This made the couple furious. They demanded to see the manager and added that if they were in pain, they should hurry to the hospital. Just then, Dr. Manhwa witnessed the scene. He rushed over and asked Soo-min what had happened. The couple recounted the incident to Dr. Manhwa. Manhwa bowed his head in apology, saying he would take them to the hospital immediately. He turned to Soo-min and told her he would take them to the hospital first and that she should follow behind. Soo-min felt scared, secretly blaming Assistant Jane for making her do this to humiliate her. At the hospital, Park Min-hwan asked Soo-min if Jiwon had reminded her that the trial products contained allergens. Soo-min cried, saying Jiwon might have mentioned it, but she hadn't heard, and apologized to him for that. Min-hwan felt a headache coming on. He was about to marry Jiwon and didn't want her to face disciplinary action, but he also didn't want Soo-min to get fired. He suggested that Soo-min shouldn't talk about this with anyone and told her to go apologize to the customers so they wouldn't file a complaint with the supermarket. Hearing Min-hwan agree to help her, Soo-min hugged him tightly to thank him. Soo-min said that even if she got fired, it wouldn't matter, but she was worried about Jiwon. Min-hwan comforted her, thinking that Jiwon had truly found a great friend. He urged her not to worry and to trust him. Min-hwan reached up to wipe her tears. In that moment, Soo-min was determined to win this man over. Meanwhile, Jiwon was working, thinking about how Soo-min and Min-hwan were managing their business. Just then, her phone rang. It was Uncle Min-hwan calling. He asked her why she hadn't told Soo-min that the third sample contained peanuts. Luckily, he had arrived just in time to resolve the issue, or it could have turned into a big problem. Jiwon remembered that she had already discussed this with Soo-min and realized everything. She didn't want to say anything more. Ji-won instructed him not to tell Soo-min that she knew about it and asked him to comfort and reassure her on her behalf. Ji-won chuckled to herself, realizing that Soo-min had truly lived up to her expectations. That evening at Assistant Jen's house, as soon as she walked in, she asked if her child had been well behaved at home and if they had troubled the grandparents. She asked her mother if the baby had been a handful, and her mother replied that the child had been very well behaved. Her father and husband asked if she was hungry and urged her to shower and come eat, saying they had prepared kimchi soup. She obediently went to take a shower. It had been a long time since she had bathed with such a light heart. It felt right to follow Ji-won's advice. She remembered a few days ago when she had shared her worries with Ji-won about not having anyone to look after her child. Ji-won had suggested that she asked her biological parents for help, but her parents thought she was living happily and didn't know that her husband had lost his job. She didn't want them to worry. Ji-won encouraged her to reconsider, saying that parents often think of their children and would do anything for them. She hoped that she could have an honest conversation with her parents. Who knows, they might become a solid support for her. She had thought a lot about it and couldn't give up on this project. If she got promoted, her family could live a happier life. Just as she finished her shower and stepped out, her husband rushed over to ask why she was calling her parents and talking about him losing his job. He told her she was crazy. Didn't she just need to go to work early and do overtime? She told him she had to work overtime with the staff at the company, and if he was uncomfortable, he could just leave the house. This house was under her name, and she was the one who paid for both the mortgage and living expenses. He raised his voice, questioning if she was trying to show off just because she had money. Furious, she told him to either go out and earn some cash or stay home and take care of the kid. If he didn't want to be kicked out of the house, he'd better get his act together. The next morning, as soon as she stepped into the office, Ji-won received a call from Assistant Jen. Listening to her, Ji-won said she was doing great, and from now on she could finally breathe easy. Assistant Jen thanked her, and Ji-won felt happy for her, since everything seemed to be settling down. While they were chatting, Manager Jin-hook approached her, causing Ji-won to jump a little. He asked if she was done talking with Assistant Jen. She replied that she was finished, but if she remembered correctly, today was his business trip day, so why was he here? Jin-hook explained that his flight was in the afternoon. He mentioned he had a few things to discuss with her, so he stopped by the office for a bit before heading out. Ji-won was puzzled as to why he would come all this way to talk when he had a trip coming up. The two of them headed to a cafe on the first floor, and as she followed him inside, she muttered to herself that she should have just kept talking to Assistant Jane. Jung-hook asked Ji-won what she wanted to drink, and she shyly replied that she'd like an Americano. When the cashier mentioned a free sandwich, Ji-won recognized the voice as very familiar. She looked up, over Jung-hook's shoulder, and realized it was Park Man-han. Jung-hook pulled out his card to pay, and Man-han greeted Ji-won with a bright smile, surprised to see her there. Ji-won was taken aback. Jeon-hyu was equally surprised, not expecting Ji-won to know him, and shot Man-han a not-so-friendly look. Man-han recognized him as the guy who picked Ji-won up at the class reunion and asked if he was Ji-won's boss. Ji-won felt confused when Jin-hook asked Man-han if he was the one who yelled at her to check the block. Man-han admitted it, saying he was running a cafe here and suggested they meet up more often in the future. Ji-won awkwardly agreed. When their drinks arrived, she wondered why, out of all the cafes, it had to be this one. Jin-hook asked if they were classmates. He pointed out that Man-han hadn't mentioned he was opening a cafe here. She told him she didn't know why either, but she was aware it was because of his unrequited feelings for her. She asked Jin-hook if there was something he wanted to tell her. Jin-hook sipped his coffee and mentioned that while he was on a business trip, Manager Kim would take over managing the work. He informed her that Assistant Jane's project wouldn't go through Manager Kim, but would report directly to the hubs. Ji-won asked if he knew about the poor relationship between the two of them. He told her that was a personal matter for both of them, and as a superior, it wasn't appropriate for him to interfere, but if the man was fair in his dealings, things would be different. Ji-won inquired if, in a situation like the last time, Manager Kim could face disciplinary action. She smiled and thanked the manager for his concern. Such a hint was indeed not a waste of time. Over tea, she reminded him to be careful on his business trip. When work hours began, she headed to the office. Suddenly, Jae-won stopped in her tracks. She spotted Manager Kim chatting with Hyun. He was laughing and talking with her. Jae-won sat down and pondered why it had to be today. She was sure he was up to something. A moment later, Hyun rushed up to her, visibly upset. Hyun explained that something had upset her, and Jae-won stood up, offering to make her a coffee. As she passed by Manager Kim's office, she saw him on the phone with someone. After handing the coffee to Hyun, Jae-won asked what had happened. Hyun revealed that Manager Kim wanted her to give him the plan she had written earlier. Jae-won was taken aback when Hyun mentioned that he said he would let her join the project team and become a full-time employee if she put his name as the author. This morning, Hyun had been confused when the manager called her in. He said he usually held her in high regard and always wanted her to become a full-time employee. He asked if she remembered the plan she submitted when she first joined the company, and of course, she did. Back then, he had criticized her plan harshly. Thinking of this, Hyun decided to act as if she had never heard the earlier proposals. Manager Kim told her to reconsider, asking if behaving this way would really help her become a full-time employee. Hyun angrily turned back and asked if he was trying to threaten her. He calmly replied that she should think carefully if she didn't want to be fired. Hyun couldn't stand the thought of her brilliant idea being snatched away by someone else, even if it meant risking her job. Jae-won sees Hyun's project as a gold mine, and now the head of the department is scheming to steal it. Hyun asks Jae-won if she knows which religion ranks second among the most followed and believed in. The answer is Islam, boasting over 1.3 billion followers. Yet they don't indulge in fast food. Jae-won suggests that targeting the Muslim community could be a savvy strategy for gaining a foothold. Jae-won encourages Hyun to hand over the plan to the head of the department, confident that he won't be able to pull it off. Hyun questions why Jae-won is so sure about that. Jae-won explains that there will be risks involved, but she wants them to follow his orders for now. Later, she'll find a way to reclaim the idea for Hyun, but not just yet. Hyun agrees and hands over the plan to the head of the department, who immediately submits it to the CEO. The CEO is highly impressed with the proposal. It's been ages since he's seen such a creative project. He mentions that if the project gets the green light, they'll need to send someone to Arabia for market research. The head of the department instantly thinks of Hyun and plans to find a way to send her there, telling the CEO that their team is also working on another project about salads. The CEO is persuaded and decides to prioritize the head of the department's project first. He secretly rejoices, seeing this as a once-in-a-lifetime chance to regain power. Only then will Soo-min trust and lean on him. She'll date and marry him. Meanwhile, Jae-won heads upstairs to the rooftop, bringing the documents to meet the head of the department. Just as Jae-won predicted, Assistant Jen's project has been temporarily shelved and pushed back behind the head of the department's project. Jae-won tells Assistant Jen to wait by the seaside for the enemy's body to surface. She remarks that for that to happen, someone needs to toss that body into the sea, and she's ready to be the one to do it. The head of the department is standing outside, smoking, waiting for her. He asks her what's up, and she presents the stack of documents in front of him. Jae-won says this is the report she has reorganized, and it will be beneficial for the project he's working on. This is the first step in Jae-won's plan to send him to the depths of the sea. The head of the department receives the report and skims through it. He asks her if she did it all by herself. Jae-won tells him that this industry has great potential and many businesses are targeting it, so they need to act faster than the competition. She suggests starting with advertising on social media and clearly analyze this in her report. The head of the department, Kim, is pleased. He thought that department head Ji-hook wouldn't be able to refuse. He cheerfully asks Ji-won if she wants to join the project team. She replies that, as long as he remembers her when he gets promoted, she's in. In the following days, everything unfolded just as she had planned. When the project information was made public, The company's stock price soared. The director praised him for achieving great success, and once the project wrapped up successfully, he would definitely get promoted. The head of the department, Kim, was over the moon. Shortly after, news about the company's branch opening in Arabia was splashed across several newspapers. That morning, at Unke Company, the head of the department, Kim, was walking and singing, greeting every employee he encountered. The employees were whispering among themselves, puzzled by his sudden change in demeanor. His phone buzzed with a message from Sue Men, who said she had overslept and hadn't had breakfast. Head of the department, Kim, offered to buy her some food, and Sue Men thanked him, adding that she wanted some strawberry milk too. Head of the department, Kim, beamed, finding Sue Men really adorable. Suddenly, he received a call from Secretary Han, who informed him that the director wanted to see him. He happily rushed to meet the director, feeling like everything was going his way. At the door, he knocked and waited eagerly, then joyfully stepped inside, completely unaware of the storm brewing. The director was furious and threw a stack of reports at his head. He demanded to know if Kim knew what was going on and how he planned to take responsibility for the mess. Looking at the newspaper reporting on the kidnapping of South Koreans by Islamic extremists, he realized the company's stock had plummeted. At that moment, head of the department, Kim, understood the gravity of the situation. He bowed his head in apology and suggested they halt the project for now. The director angrily asked if Kim knew how much money the company had already invested, demanding that he come up with a solution quickly. Nervously, Kim rubbed his bald head and confessed to the director that the plan was actually from an intern on his team. He babbled on about wanting to give the new intern a chance, so he claimed the plan as his own. He suggested publishing an apology saying it was the mistake of a 26-year-old intern, which might calm the public outcry. Hearing this, the director seemed to recall something and asked what the intern's name was that team leader Kim mentioned. He told the director that her name was Hyene. He even proposed publishing an article calling her the Holler Girl, thinking that if he threw Hyene under the bus, everything would be fine and the company would avoid this crisis. The director asked team leader Kim if he had told Hyene that he was the one who initiated the project. Of course, Kim had already said that. Immediately, the director demanded that he go tell Hyene that he had nothing to do with this. Everything was his own doing. The director shouted so loudly that everyone outside the office could hear. All of this was because of him, and now the branch in Arabia was also in danger. Team leader Kim walked out dejectedly, and everyone looked at him, whispering, "Because of him, everything is in chaos." At this moment, team leader Kim could only hang his head in silence. He didn't dare say anything. Pulling out a strawberry milk box from his bag, he tried to cheer himself up, reminding himself that he still had Sue Men by his side, and together they would get through this tough time. But when he brought the drink to Sue Men, she said she didn't drink strawberry milk. Confused, he asked why she had told him this morning that she wanted to drink it. Sue Men turned away without answering. Team leader Kim couldn't understand why she had changed her mind like that. Everyone in the office looked at him with sympathetic eyes. He gritted his teeth. It was all Jiwon's fault. She definitely knew Hyene had connections, which was why she befriended her. If he hadn't listened to her and leaked the documents to the press beforehand, things wouldn't have gotten this bad. Using the excuse of needing to submit a report today, he vented his frustration on Jiwon. But of course, Jiwon was already prepared. She had placed the report on his desk and texted him about it. With nothing he could do to Jiwon, he yelled out loud. He said she had pranked him on the street, and seeing Jiwon's attitude only made him more furious. He dramatically claimed that Jiwon's rudeness was a result of her parents' upbringing. Hearing this, Jiwon's expression darkened and her hand clenched tightly. He could say whatever he wanted about her, but she just couldn't stand it when he disrespected her parents. The head of the committee wasn't done yet. For him, everything that had escalated to this point was all Gan's fault. He raised his hand, ready to strike Jiwon. Department head Jinyu Huk witnessed everything unfold and swiftly intervened to stop him. Jinyu grabbed the collar of the head of the finance department. To Kim's surprise, Jinyu lifted him up high and demanded that he immediately apologize to Jiwon. The head of the department anxiously asked when he would be back from his business trip, but Ji-hook ignored him, demanding that he quickly apologize. Head of the committee Kim reluctantly apologized to Ji-won, pleading for him to stop what he was doing. Ji-hook listened to her and let go, causing the committee head to crash to the ground. Seeing this, Ji-won felt a twinge of sympathy. Jin-hook declared that he would send a disciplinary notice to the company's disciplinary board. This incident was definitely not going to end with just a salary cut. A few days later, the head of the committee received the company's disciplinary report. In addition to the failed assault and defamation of assistant Ji-won, he was also facing extra penalties for stealing Hae-jin's ideas. Head of the committee Kim was taken aback when he overheard Soo-men chatting with Park Man-hwan. She told him that she and the boss had no relationship and that she planned to transfer to another department. Minan didn't believe her, saying it wasn't necessary. The head of the committee was stealthily trailing behind, eavesdropping on their conversation. Soo-men asked Minan how the head of the department would face disciplinary action, and he said it was likely the High Council would take serious measures. The head of the committee's expression darkened when he heard what Minan said to Soo-men. He bought her a drink and told her that from now on, she didn't need to butter him up anymore. He then asked if getting demoted and suspended for 6 months was like being kicked off the stage. Hearing this, the head of the committee rushed in and threw a punch, straight at Park Man-won's face. He berated Park Man-won as a dimwit, asking if he wanted to get choked by him. Soo-men asked why he would do that. He shouted loudly that he and Soo-men were about to get married, even though he already had a girlfriend and was still flirting with Soo-men. Soo-men felt extremely embarrassed when manager Kim announced this to everyone. She definitely didn't want Park Man-hwan to know about her relationship with him. Manager Kim wasn't giving up. He told Soo-men to clarify whether their love was real, and she panicked, denying everything. Everyone in the company witnessing the scene started believing the rumors about her and manager Kim. Soo-men told manager Kim he wasn't thinking straight, which flustered him. He asked if she was acting cold towards him because of Park Man-won. Seeing so many people whispering, Soo-men hurriedly ran away, feeling embarrassed. Now everyone in the company would know all about her and manager Kim. She ran into the restroom and locked the door. She thought manager Kim could no longer take advantage of her, but now it would be very difficult for her to become a permanent employee. What would she do from now on?